I just really want to thank the organizers for Peter, Suzanne, and everyone that put today's the work and labor to make today happen, and my just so grateful to this choir and the beautiful voice. They were here early this morning rehearsing, and it was just so beautiful when you walk into space and hear that harmony together. So thank you for that. I always appreciate spaces like this, spaces where people come together, not just to listen, but to reflect together about the kind of world that we want to build. And in a moment like the one that we're living through, the world often feels fractured. So gatherings like this remind us that justice, compassion, and community are not just ideals, they are practices. Because the world we're living through right now is asking something of us. People feel it in the rising cost of living, they feel it in the housing crisis, and they feel it in the anxiety facing young people who are doing everything that they were told would lead to stability. They're working hard, they're studying hard, and still they're wondering if they'll ever be able to afford a home. They feel it in the climate crisis that now touches every corner of the planet, and they feel it in the growing sense that the systems that are supposed to work for people are increasingly working for someone else. Many people feel that something fundamental is breaking, but every moment of fracture is also a moment of possibility. Because history shows us that when people come together across communities, across faiths, and across differences, they begin to imagine something new. Now, I want to warn you, I am a public school teacher. So first, I am used to people ignoring me for the first 5 minutes until they realize that there's a pop quiz at the end. And second, teachers sometimes they like to make people participate, and so we're going to try something together. The title of my remarks today is "A Change is Going to Come: Building Justice in a Fractured Time," and that title comes from the great song from Sam Cooke, who wrote it after being refused service at a whites-only restaurant, and so sometimes speeches reach a point where words stop being enough, and that's when music has to step in. So before we go any further, I'm going to share a little bit of that song with you. I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, and just like the river, I've been running ever since. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. It's been too hard living, but I'm afraid to die, because I know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Then I go to my brother, and I said, "Brother, help me please." But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. Whoa, there's been times when I thought I couldn't last for long, but I know I'm able to carry on. It's been a long, long long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Thanks, choir. Now, let's hold on to that feeling, okay? And because that belief that change is possible is at the heart of everything that we're going to talk about today. As a public school teacher, some of the most honest questions I hear come from my students. And one year in one of my grade 5 classrooms, we were talking about wealth inequality in Canada. And, for those, school teachers in the room, it's like nonfiction texts, how you read for nonfiction texts, right? But the articles, it was about wealth inequality in Canada. And we were looking at the reality that a handful of billionaire families have more wealth in Canada than millions of Canadians. And one of the students at the back raised their hand and he said, "Mr. B, is that actually true? That just a few families have more wealth than millions of Canadians?" And I said, "Yeah, it's true." And of course, they raised their hand again and they asked me, he said, "Well, if it's true that just a few families have more wealth than millions of Canadians, why aren't adults doing anything about it?" Made the room stop. And that question has always stayed with me. That's why I'm sharing it with you today, because when you hear it from a young person, you realize how strange some things we've normalized really are. Because we live in a world of we live in one of the wealthiest countries in the world, and yet so many people are struggling to afford housing, struggling to find stable work, struggling to build secure futures, and at the same time, people are being told that the reason life is getting harder is immigrants. But scapegoating is one of the oldest political tactics that in the books. Racism and xenophobia are tools used to divide people who should be standing together. That's why the work of organizations like the Workers' Action Center, ACORN, York Southwestern Tenant Union, the Migrant Rights Network, Justice for Workers is so important. They are organizing for dignity at work, for housing justice, for migrant justice. They remind us that when people organize together, they discover their power. And that brings me to something that has been giving me hope lately: music. So recently, some of us as public school teachers, elementary school teachers, we started a choir because teachers are used to raising our voices, usually say things like, "Stop throwing the scissors!" But we realized something. We're going to, if we're going to talk about justice, if we're going to talk about solidarity, then we should also be using our voices to build community. So we started the Elementary Teachers of Toronto Choir, and it's been beautiful because it's about not just about singing, but it's about storytelling. Teachers sharing what they see every day in our classrooms, turning those stories into music. And we are now working on a project called Voices from the Front Lines. It's a developing street musical, songs about teachers, songs about students, songs about struggles happening in the public education, songs about hope, and songs about collective action. Because sometimes music can say things that speeches cannot. And if you'd like to experience that, I want to invite you to the concert. It's on Saturday, April 11th. It's with the Common Thread Community Chorus and the Elementary Teachers of Toronto Choir, and we'll be presenting a concert called Songs of Resistance. It'll take place at the Holy Trinity Church, right behind the Eaton Center. The doors open at 6:15. The actual concert starts at 7 p.m. The evening will include songs from the Common thread choir chorus, and original music from ETT Choir, including pieces from Voices from the Front Lines. And proceeds from the concert will go to the Doane Music School, helping make music accessible to children regardless of financial circumstances. So if today's gathering reminds you of that power of community, come sing with us. Because sometimes resistance also sounds like harmony. Now, I want to share another story with you from public education. Public schools are supposed to be the one great equalizers in our society, but teachers across Ontario have been watching them slowly being hollowed out. Cuts to programs, larger class sizes, fewer supports, $6.5 billion cut from the school system since 2018 when you account for inflation. And when teachers speak up, they are often punished instead of listened to. Many of you may have heard about what happened at Beaumont Public School, just down the road from here. Teachers spoke out about what the realities that they were seeing, and instead of listening to them, they were suspended or fired. But then something remarkable happened. The community showed up. Parents showed up. Students showed up. Hundreds of signed petitions, more than $15,000 raised to support those teachers. Because when communities see injustice clearly, they do not stay silent. And that brings me to Christie Pitts Park, over on the other side of the city near where I live. Because that park carries a deep history in the city, in 1933, Christie Pitts was the site of one of the largest anti-fascist confrontations in Canadian history. Nazi sympathizers were openly displaying swastikas and targeting Toronto's Jewish community. And Jewish and Greek youth in the neighborhood stood up and fought back against that hate. That moment became known as the Christie Pitts riots, a moment when ordinary people refused to allow fascism take root. That park means something to me personally. My own child grew up playing there, running across the baseball fields, climbing the playground, and even learning to ride his bike on those paths. So when far-right groups chose that same park for their rallies last year, it felt personal. Because parks like that are supposed to be places where children learn what community looks like, not places where hate tries to make home. But once again, the community showed up. Urban Alliance on Race Relations, the Toronto and York Labor Council, migrant justice organizers, students, professors, grandmothers, and instead of letting hate dominate the space, we turned the park into something else. We brought music, we brought art, we brought some speeches, and we brought community. It became something like a people's festival of solidarity. And yes, their rally ended early because hate has a hard time growing when it's surrounded by thousands of people defending one another. But moments like that also raise difficult questions, including questions about policing, because we continue to see very different responses depending on who's protesting. Movements advocating for the Palestinian human rights often face aggressive policing, yet white supremacist groups are often treated as if their view is simply another political viewpoint. And we have to be honest about that. There's been a long history in this country of policing treating communities differently depending on the color of their skin and where they came from. Justice requires fairness, not selective enforcement. Which brings me to something I'd like to invite you to. On March 23rd, educators, labor leaders, and community organizers will gather for an event marking the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. It will be a space to talk honestly about racism and hate and how we build solidarity powerful enough to confront it. If today's conversation resonates with you, I invite you that you're welcome to come, because movements grow when people gather together. And when people build relationships, when people organize, we ultimately, all of this comes down to our imaginations. Too often we're told that the only choices available are the ones that are already on the table. But movements have always been spaces where imagination grows, where people ask, what if our economy actually worked for communities? What if prosperity meant well-being? What if our institutions were strengthened instead of dismantled? Those questions are not naive. They are the starting point of every major social transformation. Which brings us back to that song. Because sometimes we need reminders that history can move, that progress is possible, that when people organize together, change happens. It's been a long, long time coming, but I know change gonna come. Oh, yes, it will. Thank you.